Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today we are going to have an amazing conversation with Amy Kirschner. Hi, Amy, and welcome.
Hey, how are you? I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, I'm very honored that you are here. So thank you for this conversation. And what we are going to talk about is how do we become leaders in our lives and in our profession, and what do we learn about it from our stories. And I have the privilege and the honor to be here with you, Emmy, and to learn about your amazing experience as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a mom that went through a lot. And I would love to hear from you uh, about your story and what have been different, what made it different, a positive difference in your life. And just if you can share with us your many lessons, that would be
So many lessons.
amazing.
I'm a slow learner sometimes, so I get to repeat them over and over again until I've mastered it. But really one of the things that came to mind for me was it was like early 2009. I had decided that I wanted to open a farm to table restaurant. I'd been catering for years, had been personal chefing, and I love healthy eating. I really wanted to be able to give people in the US, this experience that healthy food could actually taste good and they could enjoy it and be able to share some of the story of the farmers and where their food came, because I think that's really cool, the relationships, etc. So I was writing a business plan and whatnot, and a friend of mine who was a life coach at the time invited me to a networking group. And I had never been to a networking group because that wouldn't have been what I was doing. Really was catering. Things just happened organically. Before I had kids, when I was working in corporate, I didn't need to. And I was like, sure, I'll go. I love a good party. And, I want to be surrounded by amazing women as I'm building this thing. So I had no idea what I was getting into. She just said it was a ton of fun. So I was like, game. And so I get there and I had no plans, and there's 80 women. I'm expected to have a 30-second commercial, and there's a microphone, which I've never used a microphone ever at that point. And I'm just like, and I think that's the beauty of it, right? Is like she just threw me into the fire and put me on the spot so that I had to make something up in that moment so that I could talk to these great women, some of whom I'm still friends with or do business with, right? 15 years later or 10, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that was so fantastic, because I probably would have opted out in my kind of type A personality if she'd been like, oh, and you're going to have to say something for 30 seconds about what you're doing. And I'm like, oh, I need to think about that and rehearse and practice and have that certainty, right, of knowing what you're doing. So it was a lot of fun, but I was terrified, and like learning where to hold the mic was an experience.
So here already the importance of having somebody that believes in you and that sees your potential, maybe a potential that you don't even see. It gives you an opportunity to actually shine and show up and speak
Yeah.
up for yourself. So that was very powerful for you.
Yeah. And even better, I didn't recognize it as much at the time. But here are 78 other women who don't know me at all. And as I'm fumbling through very inarticulately what I was saying, like the support there of go get it, like you can do it, we've got you, that's amazing. It doesn't matter that you don't know what you're saying. Like that sisterhood and that instantaneous community is what I love about women, is that when we start asking for help, other women will rise and support us.
Yes, and I don't know if you agree with it, but I would say that it is often not so. It is not so common, and we are not so used to actually see other women showing up for us and standing up for us and supporting us and being our sponsors. Maybe
Right.
we have as a group, maybe we are very good with individuals, with friends that support us, but the group, perhaps it is not something that many women are used to. And so feeling and seeing that must have been very powerful. I know that that has been for me in my past and in my experience. So I imagine that that has been for you, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Very much so it was. And it also gave me a great frame of reference for, because I've done a lot of networking over the years. But it gave me a frame of reference of like, be intentional about including people who are new because they're just as nervous as I was.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
probably shaking just like I was.
And you took that step, you pushed yourself because you were about to start a new business, and so you were venturing in a new experience in your life. And I know a little bit about your story, and it is a beautiful story that I would want for you to share. So would you like to share what was that moment in your life, because it was a challenging one?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and just to kind of circle into like where I'm at now, so when I back up, we're not leapfrogging too much. Right now, I have such an incredible, amazing honor to work with really driven, ambitious women entrepreneurs who have service-based businesses and help them scale beyond $1 million in revenue. So really crack open their dream and help them build the teams, the sales pipeline, the marketing to get there. And, if you had met me 15 years ago as I was standing at that microphone, I think not anybody would be shocked so much, but be really surprised. And not because my business background isn't phenomenal and varied, and not that I don't provide incredible results, but the transformation of who I have become because of what has happened to me over the years, decades. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I've had has been moving through my divorce and essentially raising two boys single-handedly by myself. Their dad moved a couple of hours away very shortly after he moved out and has not played a role in their lives. So while there's been pops of people, my parents, friends, etc., who have helped, it's really been me. And my kids, I think they were 5 and 7 when we got divorced. They're 21 and 23 now. So to see that spectrum of who they have become has really driven me.
I can imagine that it was not an easy journey, right?
No, no. I mean, and for everybody who's divorced, I think you will agree in that even a good divorce is a really painful, trying, challenging time. And it's not something I would wish upon anybody.
And in fact, I agree with what you're saying. And what I wanted to ask you is what were the most difficult challenges that as a woman and as a mother and as an entrepreneur you had to face, that took you to that moment with the microphone to where you are today?
Yeah. So there's two really. In the whole process of getting divorced, I realized I was blaming a lot of other people from my circumstance and wasn't acknowledging that, like, that I was the common denominator of all the things not going right in my existence. So once I realized that and shifted my behavior, like it just made everything so much easier, right? It changed my mindset so that I got out of victim mentality and, oh, he's doing this and he's doing that and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, right or wrong on either one of our parts, like it doesn't matter anymore. And being able to see that and kind of forgive helped me move on. But it also gave me this space because at the time, like Matthew, my younger guy, was diagnosed with some learning challenges, and we were trying to figure that out because he didn't test regularly on any of the tests or any spectrum. And Brian has a super high IQ and was bored at school. And how do I figure out how to lead both of them who need dramatically different things from me? And so once I let go of that victimhood of everything that was going on, I really got clear about, like, I've got to have a path for these two kids who need different things, and how do I solve that? How do I challenge and opportunity for them differently, and single mom. And a lot of times, like, the second piece of it, I think that was most challenging was it's the time crunch. It's how do I be at school and build a business once I was in that phase, and play with them and have some time for myself and make healthy meals, and how do I be in 5 places at the same time?
Well, absolutely. So before asking you how did you address that and how you successfully answer those questions, let me go back for a moment to the first point that you mentioned, right? You shifted from feeling like a victim and blaming others, so finding the power outside of you actually that caused what you were going through, to turn somehow inward and kind of get back the power to yourself, right? Because when we blame, maybe we are not realizing that we are giving the power away, our own power away. And there is freedom in taking responsibility and ownership of what might look like a failure, right? So just wondering, would you say that there has been a moment when you became aware of this? There was a moment when you actually felt the shift happening, and what was going on then?
It was one weeknight, and I had put the kids in front of TV, which I generally speaking didn't like doing, but I was so tired. I wasn't sleeping. I was very worried about the future and what was going to be next, because there was like all of this turmoil and uncertainty. And I was they were watching TV in another room. I was sitting in the living room, and I used to have this red, like maroon red wingback chair. And I was sitting there, and I was so exhausted, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I was like, I couldn't get up. Like, I was just like, I just can't get up. I don't even have the energy to walk the 10 feet to the bathroom. And I was like, wow, like that is a new low. And things just started snapping into place for me after that. Like, it's up to you, right? It's up to me to have energy and to create a situation and to create a life where I have the energy and the vitality to show my kids and model for my kids, right? What a strong, independent, smart woman looks like. And if I'm so tired that they can't, like that I can't get up to walk 10 feet, or I'm choosing not to because it's like easier just to sit there and not go to the bathroom, then that's not living. And that really became the framework of how I led them in my business, in that I wanted them to know that they could try things and fail, and that it was okay, and that they didn't have to go down the path most followed by everybody if that's not what they wanted. And ironically, neither one of them did. So
That's beautiful. And it seems also from what you're saying that failure is something that we don't have to be afraid of. We don't have to be scared of failure. Just it's something we can move on from.
Yeah. And not that it isn't incredibly uncomfortable and upsetting or other, less than positive emotion, but it's not, when you're in that space of failure, it's not forever. And I love to really get quiet when I feel uncomfortable and uncover, like, what is it, one, that's really bothering me, but what am I learning from that? Right? What information am I getting? Like, if this doesn't feel good, then what do I do to feel better?
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
That is very powerful. Also, because when you are saying this, and this is the shift, what you are doing, you are not only looking at yourself, and so you become aware, the famous self awareness that we need in order to be better at what we do and to be better individuals to create a different life for ourselves. But by doing this, you somehow, it seems, became free to be for your kids in a different way as well. And so you were free to start thinking about how do I show up? How can I be a different mother and a role model for my
Mhm.
kids? And so looking inside gave you the space and the freedom to actually be, I say, a better mother, a better woman in terms of what you were going through, a better entrepreneur. And so now we move to the second point that you mentioned. So how did you solve that time crunch and all those questions that you had in relation to your kids?
Yeah. So some of it, like, I think I'm just time oriented in general. Um,
Mhm.
so, and Brian particularly did not like doing errands or shopping, or like he has a time factor, and that time allotment adjusts depending on what the day and the mood is. And I had to bring them places because they were too young for me to leave them, and I couldn't afford a babysitter all the time. And I got really good at planning out everything I needed to do as
Mhm.
efficiently as possible. So, like, literally, like driving down one side of the street and doing errands that I needed on one side, and then coming back and doing them on another side. There was no wandering around for me ever,
Mm.
which doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but it does in my business world help me plan projects and really utilize and focus my time more effectively. But I also I taught them. I think they were 10 and 12 ish at the time. They were in like the teeny tiny Lego piece phase, and there were Legos and all sorts of other things, just toys around. And I am not, again, I'm a little type A, so like I need things neat and organized, and not stepping out on them at 10 o'clock at night in the dark is extremely painful. For anybody who's had that experience, I'm so right there with you. But it, I had a conversation with them, and I'm like, I am not your housekeeper. I like, and we have two choices here. We can either go and do fun things, or we can all stay here and do nothing until stuff is cleaned up, because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to, you know what the rules are. You know what, you're supposed to be contributing to the family. And it took some training, right? Like I had to actually stop and not
Mhm.
stuff up. Um, but it gave us a freedom and an independence. So they really were contributing to the household because they were doing their chores more,
Mhm.
I'm going to say
And,
authentically. Uh,
mm. And perhaps from what I understand, it was also an opportunity for them to learn more about you and what you were going through, what you were building. And sometimes I think that it is important for kids, even young kids, to be aware and become aware of what their parents are actually going through and what they are doing to keep the family running
yeah.
properly.
Yeah. And I have had probably more support from them in the times where things are not working,
Mm.
where they both have been like, "You've got to keep going. You can do it." Because we'll have this dinner conversation, and it's not an oversharing so much as like, "Oh, I'm really frustrated because
Mm.
this
Mm.
marketing tactic thing, strategy isn't working the way I thought it would."
Mm.
So that's been really cool to experience that support from them. But we also built a fluidity because I've really required them to step up and contribute,
Mm.
and also gave them a space to be heard. So,
Mm.
when we were choosing activities as a family, you know, they had input, and it
Mm.
wasn't, and I was like, it was more than just, you should go play baseball, or,
Mhm.
uh,
Mm.
you
Mm.
want to go get this thing that, you've saved your allowance for. It was really like, how are we functioning? What are the values, and what, how do you want to spend your time as
Mm.
the family unit? So
Mhm.
they were used to having kind of their 2 cents heard and listened to. So it's been interesting as they're going out into the world where they're able to verbalize, "This is what I want, and this is my boundary." Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not doing X, Y, and Z because that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, and I think that establishing really boundaries, right, and establishing who I am, even in relation to my kids, becomes extremely important for the way also I then feel free to show up
Yeah.
with clients and in the world, right? And I was just wondering when you were talking now, before you mentioned that you experienced a lot of fear of the future at the beginning, right, with everything, the life you knew collapsed and everything was to be built in this dynamic. They are described where your kids become also your resources, right? Because they are encouraging, they become motivators, they become really resources for you. Just I was just wondering, because perhaps many people have experienced a similar situation in this past years. I was wondering, how were you with respect to fear of the future when the household was and the dynamic seemed to be a little bit different? What would you say?
It for me at that point and moving on, like that fear, I'm not gonna say it was gone, but I handled it differently, and um, I really gave them a lot of space to be creative too. So things
Mm,
were kind of settle, and like I had the place to live, and I knew what I was doing and working, and
mm,
financially more secure. So the fear of the future is less, a lot less.
mm. So it seems also that it is a lot less because perhaps it was a realization that even if your kids were younger and teenagers, still they were contributing. You were
Oh,
part of the system. You were not alone,
right,
right?
right. Yeah, like we have, as I said, a very fluid team.
Mm,
Uh,
mm,
and it's interesting because both my kids were living with me in my very tiny apartment during COVID for over a year. And they would hang out with me and some of my friends that also lived in the apartment building. And everybody was very like shocked that they would just get up and clear the plates.
mm,
Like, nobody had to ask them. That was part of their automatic behavior because
mm,
that's how we acted as a team. Now that seems
mm,
like a really small, insignificant thing, but
mm.
it's for me, it plays into business with when you've got that closeness and everybody's supporting each other, right? And there's freedom to mess up and still be supported, right? Things happen automatically and people have each other's back in a different way.
Yeah. So it seems like you're talking about trust. There is a level of trust
Yeah.
in the people of the team being in your home. And my question I wanted to ask: what have you learned in your home and the relationship with your kids that you are using in the business? And you are saying one element is how important is trust, and then the fluidity, right? And being there, it simply flows, right?
Yeah, it's so cool now. Like they still do certain things when we're all together.
Yeah.
Um, and we
And
still laugh at, there's a lot of laughing, like a lot of the training. I'll kind of use that broadly to have them contribute. I did in a funny way. So they weren't in trouble, right? Like not that, when they didn't clean up the dishes the way they were supposed to, I didn't yell at them or anything. I'd make a video of here's the mess.
technology, good.
And so they got the point and they laughed.
Hmm.
And and then the next time it would be a little bit less and a little bit less until everything um, was done the right Emmy way.
Mm.
And that makes it more fun.
So, how have you used, allow me to call these lessons that you have learned in the relationship with your kids, have you used them in business? Are lessons that you
Yeah,
can apply in your activity, in your
it's
business?
those lessons are foundational in how I help my clients build their teams.
Mm.
So, things like how do we create that fluidity? How do we create that support? How do we, how do we help build the culture and the buy-in, right? And I love talking about core values and mission and vision statements, because it's a great foundation to make sure that who you're hiring is aligning with where you want to go. Because if it doesn't, then they're not going to be a great fit. Now, my kids had no choice. So like, they were stuck with the core values and the general mission. But when you're hiring people, you have more opportunity and choice to find the people who are not only going to complement, what your strong suits or your gaps are, and also really be able to buy into the core values and what you want to accomplish. And that creates a much stronger culture and team in general.
Yeah. And Amy, what would you say are the three most important lessons that you would like to share that you went through in your journey as a woman? We have heard about them in relation to your kids and the family. As a woman, what would you say were the three or one challenges that you overcame?
As a woman, I think the thing that has been difficult for me, and I'm so much better, but also still intentionally like seeking space for this, is to ask for help. Like I grew up in a you just do it yourself family, and learning that like if you actually put it out there, people will help you, right? Like it's the same thing I said at the very beginning, where I'm fumbling forward through this made up 30-second pitch, and having all these people support me that I didn't know was like, it was almost overwhelming. And the same thing in business, ask for support, ask for help. If you don't know something, that's okay. Nobody needs to know and or have all the answers.
What was behind the fact that asking for help was difficult?
It just never occurred to me.
Like that it was a possibility.
Because I was so ingrained with how I was raised. And then initially as a single mom, I was just like, I just need to get through the day. Like I can't even talk to anybody at this point. Like it's like total survival mode. It didn't occur to me to ask a neighbor to watch the kids as much as I could have, or I felt like I was imposing, because they didn't need me to watch their kids. And so I was looking for more of an equal transition that was more linear, than someday, like maybe 2 months from now, they needed help with something.
And what happened that you realized that actually that was an option and it would have helped asking for
help? From the coaching that I've received, but it's also I got sick a couple of times, and I had like I couldn't take care of the boys as much, for a few days, as much as I wanted. So I had to have somebody there.
Yeah.
So then I was like, oh,
life. It is true that life also always teaches us what we need to learn, and no matter our situations, isn't it? This is something.
Yeah.
I have one last question, Amy, for you. And if you have just one possibility to give one advice. Let's think about your children or young people that are starting their adventure, their enterprise, their business, young women that are starting that. You can give them just one bit of advice. What would you say that is the most important for their career and their professional development?
I have 1.5. So one, learn to love failing, right? Like it's going to happen. There is no way that you're going to make it through life without messing something up. And I just lost it. What do you say with that? Like that's the thing that needs to be heard.
Learn to love failing. I love that. And yep, go ahead.
I came back, and everything is temporary. So that failure, that upset, along with
Mm,
all the good times, it's
mm.
all it all comes and goes. And if you know that's the way it's going to be, I think it's easier to kind of crawl or climb out of the less good times and be more intentional about enjoying the good times.
I love both of them. I think I will keep them for myself as well. Learn to love failing. And if I may add, it would do good to me as well to think that when we are failing is not because there is something wrong with us. We are just experimenting and allowing ourselves to experiment with life and
Yeah,
opportunities, right? And everything is temporary, so it is part of the process and of us becoming better human being and better leader eventually in
yeah.
life or in business. So loving it. Thank you so much, Emmy. Um, Thank you very much for being here, for having this conversation. Anything else you would like to add before we end?
No, other than I'm always happy to connect with other women entrepreneurs, women in general. So feel free to reach out to me. And
What's the best way to reach out to you? LinkedIn, I assume, is a
LinkedIn,
great one.
I'd like to say that I'm on all the platforms, but I'm not anymore, thank goodness. But LinkedIn, here is great. Facebook, Instagram, I'm at the Emmy Kirshner there. But
Beautiful,
yeah,
beautiful. So thank you very much, Amy, again, and thank you for participating with
thank
this.
you for having me on. This has been such a fun conversation, and I hope that everybody's found some value in it.
Yeah, I hope so too. So thank you, everybody, for being here, and we'll see you again next time.